Welcome back, guys and gals. This is the History Chick, and today we will be discussing history's biggest what-ifs, alternate timelines that almost happened. What if I told you that the world you live in almost looked completely different? What if the United States never existed? What if World War III had already happened? What if the Roman Empire never fell? History is built on almost, those tiny moments where one decision, one accident, or one wrong turn could have rewritten reality as we know it. Today we're diving into some of the biggest what-if moments in history, the close calls and near misses that would have changed everything. And trust me, some of these will blow your mind. Oh, and before we get started, tell me in the comments, which historical what-if fascinates you the most? I might feature it in a future episode. History isn't just a series of events. It's a chain reaction. A single moment can change everything. Think about it. A wrong turn led to World War I. A single vote decided the fate of nations, and one man sitting in a Soviet bunker stopped a nuclear apocalypse with a single decision. In 1914, a teenage assassin failed his mission, but by pure luck, the Archduke's driver took a wrong turn, putting him right in front of the assassin again. The shot was fired, and just like that, boom, World War I. Fast forward to the Cold War. The Soviets' radar mistakenly detected incoming American missiles. If Officer Stanislav Petrov had followed orders, he would have launched nukes in response, triggering World War III. Instead, he hesitated. And that's why we're still here today. See what I mean? One tiny change and history takes a completely different path. So let's explore some of the biggest what-ifs that almost happened. History isn't set in stone. It's fragile. Every moment is a fork in the road, leading us to where we are today. But what if we had taken a different path? So next time you read about history, ask yourself, what might have been? Because sometimes the biggest stories are the ones that never happened. What if Alexander the Great had lived longer? If Alexander the Great had lived longer, the course of history could have been dramatically different. Here are some key possibilities. Alexander died in 323 BCE at just 32 years old, leaving behind a vast but fragile empire stretching from Greece to India. A longer reign might have allowed him to establish stronger governance, integrate cultures further, and prevent the fragmentation that followed his death. Alexander showed interest in pushing westward into Arabia and possibly even Rome or Carthage. A longer life might have resulted in conquests that shaped Europe and the Mediterranean even earlier. His policy of blending Greek and Persian customs might have intensified. This could have accelerated the spread of Hellenistic culture beyond its historical reach. No Hellenistic. The division of his empire among his generals, the Diadochi, led to the Hellenistic kingdoms of the Ptolemies, Seleucids, and Antigonotes. A unified empire under Alexander might have prevented this fragmentation, possibly leading to a longer-lasting centralized state. If Alexander had turned westward, he might have encountered the early Roman Republic, a clash between a still powerful Macedonian empire and Rome could have changed the rise of Roman dominance. Alexander's patronage of scholars like Aristotle suggests he might have continued supporting knowledge and innovation. The Hellenistic period saw great advancements in science, philosophy, and art, perhaps even more so with Alexander's direct influence. What if the Library of Alexandria hadn't been destroyed? If the Library of Alexandria had never been destroyed, the impact on human civilization could have been profound. Here's what might have changed. The library housed vast knowledge from Egypt, Greece, India, and beyond. If this information had been preserved, the scientific revolution might have occurred centuries earlier. Discoveries in astronomy, medicine, and engineering from scholars like Archimedes, Eratosthenes, Hippocrates could have laid the foundation for modern science much sooner. There's speculation that advanced mechanical devices, like the Antikythera mechanism, were studied there. If this research had continued uninterrupted, we might have seen steam power, automation, or even industrialization emerge in the ancient world. The library was a center for multicultural knowledge exchange, bringing together scholars from different civilizations. A surviving library might have prevented knowledge bottlenecks caused by the Middle Ages in Europe, leading to a more globally connected intellectual world. Many ancient texts on philosophy, mathematics, and early scientific theories were lost. Preserving them could have influenced the development of Christianity, Islam, and Western philosophy, potentially creating a more science-friendly theological evolution. With the more rapid accumulation of knowledge, the balance of power between civilizations might have shifted. Ancient Egypt or Hellenistic cultures could have remained dominant longer, or other regions might have progressed more rapidly. Works of Sappho and Anaximander, early Buddhist and Hindu texts, and even unknown inventions could have been preserved. What if the Norman invasion never occurred? If the Norman invasion of England in 1066 had never occurred, the trajectory of English, European, and even world history would have been significantly different. Here's how things might have played out. The Norman introduced thousands of French and Latin words into English. Without the invasion, England might have remained closer to Old English, Anglo-Saxon, more like modern Greek or Dutch. Legal, culinary, and aristocratic words like court, beef, and justice would likely not exist as they do today. Before 1066, England had deep Viking influences from Danish and Norse rule. Without the Normans, England might have remained Scandinavian-oriented rather than shifting towards continental Europe. William the Conqueror centralized power and introduced a rigid feudal hierarchy. Without him, England might have developed a more decentralized or Anglo-Saxon style monarchy with stronger local governance. William's Doomsday Book of 1086 was an early example of systematic record-keeping. Without it, England might have been slower to develop its administrative and tax systems, delaying the growth of centralized government. The Normans ruled both England and large parts of France, leading to centuries of conflict such as the 100 Years' Wars and the Angevin Empire. Without Norman rule, England and France may have developed separately, possibly preventing these wars. The Normans introduced stone castles like the Tower of London to assert dominance. Without them, England might have relied on more Anglo-Saxon wooden fortifications, delaying military advancements. Norman rule led to conflicts between the monarchy and the nobles, eventually forcing King John to sign the Magna Carta in 1215. Without Norman control, English legal traditions may have evolved differently or more slowly. The Norman-led aristocracy shaped England into a continental power, later fueling British imperial ambitions. Without them, England's foreign policy and colonial expansions could have taken a very different course. Would England have remained a Scandinavian kingdom? Would it have still become a global empire? What part of this alternate history fascinates you the most? What if the Roman Empire never fell? If the Roman Empire never fell, the world would look drastically different today. Here's how history might have been unfolded. The Roman Empire had advanced infrastructure, aqueducts, roads, and concrete, technologies lost for centuries after its fall. If Rome had continued developing without the Dark Ages, we might have seen the Industrial Revolution occur 1,000 years earlier. Rome's dominance meant a common law system, language being Latin, and economy. If it had lasted, there might have been an early European Union-like superstate, preventing centuries of European wars. The fall of Rome allowed the Catholic Church to fill the power vacuum. If the empire had survived, pagan traditions might have remained influential, or Christianity might have evolved differently under direct imperial control. The fall of Rome led to the feudal system with kings, lords, and serfs. A surviving Rome might have maintained urbanization, preventing the fragmentation of Europe into isolated kingdoms. Many Greek and Roman scientific discoveries were lost for centuries. If scholars like Galen and Ptolemy had been continuously studied, we might have reached the Age of Enlightenment centuries earlier. Without its fall, Rome might have discovered and colonized the Americas before Spain and Portugal. The empire might have expanded eastward, clashing with China or India, altering global history. Latin could have remained the dominant world language, influencing modern English, Spanish, and French differently. Would modern countries even exist? A Latin-speaking superstate might have reshaped national identities. Would Rome have adapted and modernized, or would it have eventually collapsed from internal struggles anyways? What part of this alternate history interests you the most? What if the Viking had colonized North America successfully? If the Vikings had successfully colonized North America, history would have taken a drastically different course. Here's how things might have changed. The Viking settlement at Lands on Meadows in Newfoundland shows they reached North America, but they abandoned it. A strong Viking presence might have led to Norse influence in what we now call Canada and the US. Instead of English, Spanish, or French, Norse languages and customs could have shaped the continent. Vikings would have interacted with indigenous peoples like the Beothuk much earlier. Trade, cultural exchange, or warfare could have altered Native American society centuries before Columbus. Some tribes might have adopted Norse technologies such as iron tools and longships. If the Vikings had established strong settlements, Spain, France, and England might have had to contend with Norse colonies when they arrived in the 15th through 17th centuries. Would the age of exploration have started earlier? Or would a Viking-controlled America have resisted later European colonization? Vikings were pagan before converting to Christianity. If they maintained their beliefs in the Americas, North America might have had a stronger Norse mythology influence rather than Christianity becoming dominant. The Norse already traded as far as Byzantium and the Middle East. If they had stayed in North America, they might have built a transatlantic trade route centuries before Columbus. The introduction of iron weapons, shipbuilding techniques, and farming methods could have altered indigenous societies, possibly giving them advantages in later conflicts with Europeans. If Viking settlements thrived, could they have formed a Norse American kingdom? This might have led to wars between North America and European powers over territory. Would we have a United States of Vinland today? Would native cultures have resisted European colonization better with Viking alliances? And what part of this alternative history excites you the most? What if the Black Death never happened? If the Black Death, stretching from 1347 to 1351, had never happened, the world would look very different. The plague killed 30 to 60% of Europe's population and reshaped society in profound ways. Here's what might have changed. The plague wiped out up to 200 million people globally. Without this devastation, Europe's population might have reached modern numbers centuries earlier, possibly accelerating industrialization. The loss of so many peasants created a labor shortage, which gave workers higher wages and more rights. Without the plague, serfdom might have continued, delaying the rise of the middle class. The Black Death disrupted old institutions, leading people to question church authority and feudal rule. This helped spark the Renaissance, fueling new ideas in science, art, and humanism. Without the plague, the Renaissance might have happened later or differently. The plague pushed advancements in medicine and hygiene, leading to better public health. Without it, Europe might have taken longer to develop medical science, possibly delaying germ theory. The church lost credibility because it couldn't stop the plague. This weakened religious authority, paving the way for Martin Luther and Reformation. A stronger Catholic Church might have prevented or delayed Protestantism. The labor shortage shifted economic power to cities, encouraging trade and capitalism. Without this change, Europe's economic and colonial expansion might have looked very different. Would Spain, Portugal, or Britain have led global exploration without these economic shifts? The Black Death left Europe with a sense of doom and obsession with death. Without this trauma, medieval culture might have been less fatalistic, influencing art, literature, and philosophy. Would Europe have stayed trapped in medieval feudalism, or would change have come another way? What aspect of this alternate history do you find most compelling? What if the Byzantine Empire had survived? If the Byzantine Empire had survived, the world would look vastly different. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 marked the end of the empire. But if Byzantium had endured, here's how history might have changed. The Byzantine Empire was the continuation of the Roman Empire, blending Greek, Roman, and Christian influences. If it had survived, it could have countered the rise of the Ottoman Empire, possibly preventing Islamic expansion into the southeastern Europe. A stronger Byzantium might have reshaped Eastern Europe differently, influencing countries like Russia, Serbia, and Greece even more than they already did. The Ottoman conquest of Constantinople forced Europeans to find new trade routes, leading to the Age of Exploration. If Byzantium had survived, Spain and Portugal might not have rushed to find new routes to India and the Americas, delaying or changing global colonization. The fall of Byzantium sent Greek scholars and texts to Western Europe, fueling the Renaissance. If Byzantium had remained a center of learning, science, philosophy, and classical studies, might have flourished earlier in the East, possibly accelerating global advancements. After Byzantine fell, Russia claimed to be the Third Rome and took up leadership of the Orthodox Christian world. If Byzantium had survived, Russia might not have become such a dominant force in Eastern Christianity, leading to a different balance of power. If Byzantium had endured, could it have reconquered lost territories? Perhaps parts of Italy, Egypt, or the Balkans? A surviving Byzantine Empire might have been a major rival to Western Europe, competing with the Holy Roman Empire, France, and Spain. A powerful Byzantine state might have altered European alliances, possibly preventing events like World War I, where the Ottoman Empire played a major role. Instead of the Ottomans controlling the Middle East, a Byzantine presence there could have shaped modern borders and conflicts differently. Byzantium might have influenced a more centralized European identity, possibly preventing centuries of national rivalries and war between France, England, and Germany. Would Byzantium have become a major world power like Britain or the US? Or would it have still fallen eventually? What aspect of this alternate universe do you find most compelling? What if King Henry VIII of England and Catherine of Aragon had a living male heir? If King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon had a living male heir, English history and perhaps global history would be radically different. Here's how. Henry's desperate need for a son led him to break from the Catholic Church, creating the Church of England in 1534. If Catherine had given birth to a healthy son, Henry likely would have never sought an annulment, keeping England Catholic. England might have remained part of Catholic Europe, avoiding religious turmoil like the dissolution of the monasteries and the execution of Thomas More. Without the annulment, Anne Boleyn would have never become queen, and Elizabeth I would have never been born. This means no Elizabethan age, no defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, and possibly no golden age of English exploration and literature. Henry's son, let's call him Henry IX, would have succeeded him instead of Edward VI, who died young. Mary I or Elizabeth I. England's monarchy might have been more stable, preventing later Tudor succession crises. Mary I, a devout Catholic, took the throne and persecuted Protestants, earning her the nickname Bloody Mary. If England had never broken from the Catholic Church, her reign might have not been so violent, or she might never have ruled at all. Elizabeth's Protestant rule led to tensions with Catholic Spain, culminating in the Spanish Armada's attack on England in 1588. If England had remained Catholic, Spain might have never had a reason to invade. Protestant England pursued colonization, trade, and piracy against Catholic nations like Spain and France. A Catholic England might have had closer ties to Spain, possibly altering the colonization of the Americas. Would England have been as aggressive in exploring and conquering new lands? The Anglican Church shaped England's national identity and influenced global Protestant movements. A Catholic England might have been more closely tied to Rome, impacting religious divisions in Scotland, Ireland, and the American colonies. Would England still become a global superpower? Or would it have remained a Catholic kingdom overshadowed by Spain and France? What part of this alternate history interests you the most? Guys and gals, if y'all got this far, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time on the History Check.